Thanks for joining in. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Ooh, there's someone I don't recognize. Hey, Pooja. How are you? Lana, hello. Welcome, Lana. I feel like this might be, it's not one of the first calls I've seen you on. I don't
I've been
think so.
on a couple.
You've been on a couple, yeah. I wanted to make sure. I was like, Lana, I remember Lana. Then I saw your face and I'm like, yes, Lana, I remember you. Of course. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, it's a lovely morning. Here to get some stuff done, of course. Thank you all for dropping in. So I'm just gonna get some stuff set up. But I'd love to hear, Lana, have you been to any of these ones before, the Portfolio Lives?
The only one I've been to was like the very first one where you do like kind of planning out your whole plan, like what case studies you're going to do and stuff. And then I've missed all the other ones, but I have done my case study canvas, but that's like it.
Yeah. Awesome. How are you sitting with your portfolio at the moment?
Oh, my computer's talking. I haven't really gotten that far. I mean, I just did the case study canvas and then I was like, okay, now I need to get to like storyboarding, but I haven't done it yet. But also like I'm someone who has like so much stuff on the canvas that I'm like, oh, I need to edit this down.
There's a lot here. Yeah. I think that's where we often recommend trying out the storyboarding. I think that's something we did yesterday. Actually, it was on yesterday. So the storyboarding can sometimes help draft some of that clarity. Getting feedback always helps.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
are you guys going to post a recording of the storyboard from yesterday, or do you not record those ones?
So everyone has Portfolio OS. We technically have a pre-recorded recording, so you can go through the storyboarding. We normally don't post those workshops just because we've already got like so many videos of them. It's just kind of on repeat, really. But yeah.
Okay, so I'll just watch the other one.
That should work. Yeah. Pooja, how about you? Just figured I'd do a check-in before we kick off. Give people a few minutes.
Yes, hi. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. And how are you sitting at the moment with your time in Case Study Club and in your portfolio?
Yeah, I'm working on portfolio. Yeah, I'm still have to complete it. My resume is yeah, I got feedback from you last time and I worked on that. So maybe I will work on the visual design, of course. That's it.
Awesome. Well, you are in the right place. So just to reiterate kind of why we're here, these are live sessions. So I need to make my own portfolio and resume. It's been a few years. And we were like, what would be cool? How about we try and live stream the whole thing so people can see the mess, really how it actually feels. Like sometimes we talk about portfolios, but it's inherently quite a messy process no matter where you're going. So that's the intent behind this. Today's kind of the last session for the resume. I don't anticipate there being another one because we're kind of reaching the end point where it's kind of maybe some fiddly bits and that's it. But the plan after this for today is to have a bit of fun with the visual design. I've got some ideas on where I want to put mine. But for us to kind of go through some of those steps, maybe it might raise some good questions along the way. It also might just show kind of the process that personally I go through. Additionally, after this, we'll probably end up going through the capabilities deck next, and maybe even a sneaky website design. I need to do up a single pager website, which I might do really rapidly and try and achieve in 2 hours. I am told I'm over ambitious. So we'll see maybe how that goes. But we're here today for the resume. And then we'll break out into the capability deck next time. I anticipate that taking probably another 3 sessions for that. We'll see how we go. But okay, let's do a recap of where we left things last time. I had to figure out where did I put all my resume draft. So I had a mini freak out very briefly, like, oh God, I forget where this went. But we used the Portfolio OS Resume Lab section to draft the copy last time. So this isn't the resume itself. We were focusing on content, and we went with the whole framing of content is king. And so in the last one, we tried to come up with dot points that gave us enough content to go off for each of the kind of core roles that I've been a part of in the past few years. We talked about the planning being focused more along the lines of kind of design management or more of senior design level for this resume. That was the focus. My latest 2 experiences were our big focus for the last 2 sessions, and that's my work in my day job at a government regulator, which is called the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, and my work, of course, with Case Study Club. So having 2 very different work, but very related in some ways. So we focused on trying to get really strong, clear dot points for each of these. They didn't need to be perfect. They just needed to describe maybe the 3 biggest achievements and have some measure of metrics. And you'll see in the very first one here, that was a dot point focused around the design system that let me zoom in a little, that we even left a kind of blank XX percentages as a placeholder. We didn't really know it, but I could get the number. So we've done that for a few of these. We've tried to just put as much metrics on these so it feels it's as specific as possible, because specificity equals way more trust, as well as it's more trustworthy that these are real things. You don't really argue with things when they're very specific. If I said something cost $33.24, you'd kind of believe it more than if I gave kind of really generic abstract numbers. That's a very poor analogy, but I'm going to stick with it. So rather than being detailed, we want to be specific is kind of what I mean there. So the difference between those 2 things are, I think, very useful. We had a few extras that we weren't sure about adding, so we added them as brackets for notes for later. So we had some team ways of working, stuff that I did when I was leading the team here. So we weren't sure how to fit them in, but we'll keep some loose dot points there for today. They don't need to be perfect. We can always just cull them. We're focusing on, okay, let's come up with the visual design that this can fit into. And then the last thing will be polishing and refining and removing stuff that maybe doesn't work. Okay, so we had some notes for Case Study Club. We even have, I think, enough there to go off. Don't think these are actual numbers. So I don't recall these being proper numbers. So I'm just going to put X's here so I don't accidentally think they're real. We had a few roles. We wanted to get the breadth of roles as well. So we went back a few different roles here. And we've gone back and forth between private and consulting. We had some extra roles that we decided not really to include, if I remember correctly. No, actually, I think, were we including these? I'm trying to remember that. I think these were optional extras that we had 2 other roles that we weren't sure whether to include. So I'm going to leave those there. I think we already have dot points drafted for these. We're going to focus on at least getting our main experience into the visual design here. Okay, and we went through a ton of other, just doing a recap. We went through a ton of other exploration. We pulled stuff from LinkedIn. We pulled stuff from old resumes. Okay, so we're not going to do any content work today. We're going to focus on visual design. Now, if we jump over to my Google Drive, stop sharing briefly just for 1 second. And let's take a look at the old resume. And someone has joined the room. People in the room. There we go. Should have pulled this one up beforehand. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. We have just done a quick recap on where we left things last session, drafting pretty much all the dot points as a rough draft. And today we're really focused on just looking at, okay, what's the visual design? What's the template going to be for putting this content in? And then we're going to move on to refining and polishing it. Okay, let's take a look at the resume I use to get my current roles. Oop, I have. Okay, cool. Can you all see my screen? Hang on, I've broken butter briefly. Let's reshare again. Entire screen. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's take a look at the old resume. So I'm going to open this PDF. Let's look at some even older ones that are. Maybe do I have any older resumes in here? I do have older resumes. Awesome. This is bringing back memories. I forgot about all these. I think that's good enough. Yeah, okay. Okay, so I mean, the oldest, these two resumes we have here were back when I was doing a combination of marketing and comms and designer, trying to be a designer pretty much. So this was my full resume. I really digged the black and white design. I liked the kind of highlighting. It made it really clear. It reminded me of a newspaper a little bit. So this was the old design, and it worked pretty well. It was pretty compelling. Some worthy notes is we had a really quick single sentence description about me from a very third party perspective. We had a portfolio website link in the top right. We had a mobile phone number, a LinkedIn, and we had my name in the top left with really big fonts. So that was pretty cool. Under experience, some design notes that I liked the most are probably the differencing in fonts. So having a big experience tab here, having the highlight yellow still definitely pleases me. We have the role to the right and also the company. Oh, I'm noticing something. No, yep, that's right. Civil Aviation Safety Authority. Yep, cool. So I updated this a few weeks ago, way before we decided to do this, just in case I needed to send something early. So we have all the experience on a single page, and that's the focus of that. On our second page, we did relative skills, which I may scrap for this for this next edition of the resume. I kind of don't think this helps me in any way, shape, or form. It does show a comparative list of here's my skills. Maybe I'm more skilled in this side, a bit more skilled in this side, but I don't think it actually, other than being pretty, I don't think it actually lends much. So for now, we might kind of leave this blank and see how we go. Certification, I think that's still important to keep. So we'll keep all the certification. Tools, undecided on that. We may just remove that. I don't think a lot of the roles I'm applying for, I don't think tools matter anymore. If people want to know if I can use Figma, if I've built a design system, it's pretty obvious. Education, will keep that, and we do references on request. So that's a current resume design. What do I don't like? What am I wanting to completely revamp? One, it's too complex. I don't think it needs to have this color. I want to really simplify this down. So let's take a look at some maybe resume inspiration, kind of have a visual to go off on where I'm thinking I'm heading. Let's do some Google image searches. Very basic. Does anything stand out? I'm not doing this double-sided design. I don't like that. I want it single column, super easy to read. It's just top to bottom. You don't have to think about anything else. Don't make me think that's going to be my philosophy for this resume. This is pretty good, actually. I don't mind this. It is double column. Can we zoom in? This is so small. Okay, so what I'm focusing on, I think, is I really like spacing. So clear and consistent spacing is going to be the main priority. Really good font ratios, and just primarily simplicity. I still want to bring color back in. One of the things I loved most about this is it's got color. Color is important. What I'm thinking of doing is bringing color in for each role. So each role will kind of maybe have an icon. So let's take a look at what that might look like. I'm going to do just a really quick and scraggly wireframe in Figma. I'm using Figma just because I'm faster at it. So let's start with some blocks, some really basic shapes just to see if we're going along the right track. Okay, so we've got our A4. Really what I want to emphasize on today is going to be a few things. One, we want to focus on a good, simple, and readable font. These are our requirements, so to speak. So our design requirements. Good, simple, readable font. Varied, clear, and distinct headings. Accent colors only. So no big colors everywhere, blue over here, yellow over there, massive bars like we had earlier. Good spacing. I have no idea what that means, but we're going to add that there because that's kind of what I would like. We're going to go for single page first. And we'll test maybe 2 pages. Just try and get the experience on there. Okay, that's pretty abstract requirements, but we're going to stick with that. So I'm going to start really basic here, and I'm going to just put my name. Normally, I would do lorem ipsum text when I'm doing other designs, but we're keeping this really rough. So let's go big text there. And if I keep drafting this without doing a really quick cheat here, then I'm going to lose my mind. So I need a typographic scale. If you've ever worked with these before, it just makes the job so much easier. So I'm going to use a widget. I'm going to need, let's scale sizes. This is not what I want. It just says increase. Don't know what this means. If I just hit create, what does this thing do? Okay, it's not doing anything. Let's go over to Google. Starting with the type scale, because if I start putting things together, then my ratios are just going to be completely off. Okay. Oh, this is much better. Now, I forget what a good body size is for an A4 piece of paper. A4 paper. So you're going to be seeing me Google this. That is not what I'm after. I should probably put the words font size. 12 point. I don't like 12 point, so we're going to go 16. Cool. It's already in there. Great. Let's see what that looks like. Just basic readability. Our emphasis here is making sure, is this super readable? I don't care about anything else right now. I think 16-point font's kind of big, actually, but let's go. Ooh, let's grab our. We're going to have quite a bit of stuff, so let's grab 3 dot points. I want to see what that looks like on 16-point font before I chuck this all in. Let's pretend we have good margins. Okay, that's a lot of content. So we got 2 choices. We either lower the font or reduce the dot points. So let's go with the lowered font, as much as I hate that first. It really throws me off as a font number, but we're going to do it anyway. I'm just going to do a quick check-in with you guys. So I'm just trying to get the font ratios together. Is this useful for anyone? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's nice to think it out.
Yeah, okay, cool. And this is probably more of a nerdy session, this one, than anything else. Spent the past like year and a half building a design system, so this is like my opportunity to finally put all of that learning to test. There again. Share screen. Okay. Let's also put a timer on, because if we don't time ourselves, then when we play with type and font, it could turn into several hours very fast. So, okay, let's actually chuck some clear goals before I jump in. That's a very good idea. This is going to be our schedule. Today's schedule. How far over time are we already? 20 minutes over time. I'm going to be going, I think, I'm going to be going for an hour and a half. I think we put an hour on this. Let's go for an hour, but I'm probably going to chuck an extra half hour on. And so, font, type, and ratio. I'm going to give us 10 minutes on that. So for my time, that's going to be 7:30. Then for the next, probably what we want to do is come up with, choose a font scale, choose a basic font, something to start off with. We can always change it later on. And then test that with our copy just to make sure, does this all fit or does it look hella bad? Then we're going to do some margins and spacing. So layout first. Then I want to test the color accents. I have some ideas, and the color accents, I'll just so people know where I'm going. My basic idea at the moment is that I've got in mind is this is a position role. This is civil aviation safety. The basic idea is this, that we have all of our content nice and simple in. Let's pretend this is great spacing and not terrible spacing. And that for each role, we have a logo for that role. And that's the little bit of color that comes into it. So really basic. That's kind of the idea I want to test out on whether that's feasible, whether it will look good. And that's where the accent color comes into it. So beforehand, we had highlighting yellow that drew attention to each role and kind of delineated them. But I kind of want to see whether or not I can come up with some way for the logo for the role being the attention drawer, but not in a way that's too overwhelming. So that's the really basic concept that we're going to work with today. If it doesn't work, then we will redesign the old resume and just stick with that for now. Okay, so let's get the font scale back in. Let's jump back over to our Google Chrome. I have a preferred font scale because I had to sit here and play with it for quite a while. Is there font scales for A4 paper? I don't know if there's a preferred font scale for an A4 paper, but let's just quickly see. Nope, we're going with my one. I'm going to go with major third just because I'm used to that font scale and I like it. So we're going to go with this one here. Can I just copy and paste these? Let's check out heading 1, which is, give me pixels, please, 53.41. So if we assume this is going to be heading 1, 53.41. Too bad. 42.72. Okay, that's way too big. So heading 5, 2188. That's better. We'll go with that for now. So our heading 5 is 2188. So let's just create these on the side here. I'm not using variables for those who are familiar with that, because that's a bit much at the moment. Cool. There's our heading 5. We can apply this, and then we can just change all the font ratios. I don't think I actually applied that, did I? No. We can change all the font ratios and color later, and then it's just all applied to our text. So that's going to help us experiment with this way more. 2180. It was. I have a memory like a goldfish. Oh, okay, there's heading 5, and we want heading 1. Do the entire scale, but 1. 5341. Boring bit. And we want our base font, which for now is 14. So we're just going to go body font is 14. I do it in Figma mostly. I'm most familiar with Figma, and because we can just swap all these numbers, if you're in the experimentation phase, I find this just immensely easier than any other platform. 3418. We'll go a heading 3. Heading 3s are often great for something. And then we'll go from there. 34. I'm also going to grab the small font. Just occasionally I find small fonts useful for like doing some accent designs. So the 11 and okay, hopefully that should be good enough. And these aren't in numerical order, so that's going to destroy me if I do not reorganize those. Okay, we got heading 1, 3, and 5. Okay, I'm here. I might as well add the rest. 42, 72. Be our foundation for just the whole font of this. Even if we redesign the new one, we'll keep this. Heading 4 is 2734. Last one. Always start with font and layout, or else that is not font 3, or else we just get lost in everything. Okay, cool. We have our type setup. We're going to stick with Inter, but we'll do a little bit of exploration for things later down the line. Let's chuck a timer on. We're probably a little over time anyway. We're going to do 2 more minutes for this and then switch. Timer is on. 2 minutes. Okay, so let's check what this would look like if we kept things super basic. So let's go heading 2. Let's go heading. Nope, we're going to need 5. We already tested this. Heading 5. Okay, that's way better ratios there. These still look very, very off, but we're going to go with it for now. Put these on one side. I don't know where to put these. Bring this down to heading 2. That's not really doing too well for my brain. Okay, this is okay. We're going to stick with okay. And let's check the new body font. Okay, it's not perfect. I don't like how big this heading is here. So I'm going to give it heading 6 instead. 17.5, which we don't have. And let's just use bolding here because sometimes that helps them stand out. Okay, now the ratio here is a bit better now. I'm not too fussed with what we've got. We can fit everything on by the look of it. We're going to go with this, and then we might experiment later with either a different font or a different scale. We might generate 7 versions of these once it's all kind of laid out, and then just start tweaking them all and then see what we like later on. But this is good enough for now. So let's start setting the margins. Now, I'm less experienced with margins, but we're going to, well, it's a 2-minute timer. So, okay, let's tick off. We've got our font ratio. We're going to just say we've done the font type because we're just going to, by default, use, okay, we're not using Inter by default. I don't want Inter. So we're going to use my personal favorite, Helvetica. We'll do Helvetica New. No, just Helvetica. regret changing this, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay, and that's going to be our font. We have a font scale set up, so now we can start figuring out our ratios. It's probably a way easier way to mass change the font type. I'm pretty sure you can just select everything and then change one, something like that. Okay, so we've got our font scale. We're going to go with Helvetic for our basic font just because it pleases me. I'm not going to be satisfied with it, but we are going to need to come up with a better one later on. We might choose 2 fonts, maybe one for the big heading, one for the smaller, but that's going to be later. Okay, let's test with our copy. Really basic. I just want to see, okay, it looks all roughly on a similar side. We're just going to use Figma's auto layout here just to give us clean spacing, or else things can look off. And I'm going to use 8-point spacing because that's pretty default. So everything's going to be divisible by 4 or 8. Okay, I'm going to keep my little circle here just because I'm still really invested in that design. Let's jump back over to our copy. Case Study Club down here. I'm also not liking this bolding, this capitalization. Safety authority. Haven't done the role placement, so where that would fit into this whole thing, but right now we're just focusing on a rough look at everything. Okay, that's not doing too bad. Place. Very brief role thing place. Now, what I want them to think, I don't want to add too much detail to my ladder roles. I want them to hyper focus on the first 2 and then just use the rest as like supporting roles. They're like, okay, they've given us a little insight into their other roles that are most relevant, maybe the biggest 1 or biggest 2 things that they've done in that role, but they haven't gone as in-depth as the first 2. The first 2 will give you tons of insight into what I've done recently, and the rest will kind of give you a bit more of a longitudinal look. So it's like looking from far away. You can still see some cool stuff, but you're not looking as close as everything else. Oh, we're running out of room. What this is doing. And we may go into 2 pages anyway, just because when you do reach the kind of like start getting into the senior level, you have so many roles that sometimes having 2 pages can be really good. So we're going to go automatically across to 2 pages just to visualize all this and stick with all the copy we originally decided on. Skills and implement. Yeah, this is doing comes off the end, so I don't like that. We're going to just keep that straight up here. I think that's mostly it. Let's grab those certifications, which I'm just going to rip from the old resume because I don't want to retype everything. Just so we have a first layout to work with, and that's going to be, we don't have our header for experience. We didn't put that in yet. But let's go with maybe the heading 5 originally, and I'm going to bold it, even though probably not a good idea. But we'll go with it anyway. This is going to be our rough draft to start tweaking and refining, and let's pretend we're also doing the logos here. Why not? That would be kind of cool. Maybe cool. Maybe. No logos here. Nope, I'm too obsessed with the having logos next to everything, so we're going to do that. These should not be bolded. I want Scrum fundamentals up first because Scrum is a pretty good certification to have if you're doing anything relating to team leadership, all that sort of thing. It's just a nice extra cherry on top, so to speak. Okay, and we seem to have lost all of our styling, so let's just chuck that back on. We'll go body, even though I don't think body fits here, but we'll do it anyway. Okay, that's certification. Oh, and now we're missing education. Okay, last one. Why I shouldn't have included the logo because we're not going to fit everything in. And the bachelor science. Now, just because I'm a nerd when it comes to Figma and design systems, we're actually probably going to build this resume as if we were building wireframes. So we're going to use probably components and stuff anyway. However, that said, we'll see how we go. We're not going to do that right now. Okay, so really on its basis, the ratios aren't doing too bad right now. The layout overall is okay. We're missing a lot of details still. We don't have the roles for our sessions here. We've managed to fit everything on 2 pages, which is great. That's kind of what we wanted. It's not over 2 pages, it's not under. There's plenty of white space still going on for us to work with in terms of refining the visual design. Any other major stuff we've missed from here? I don't think so. Let's see, I'm trying to think if there's any content in the new resume that wouldn't be in the old. Not really, because any new stuff is going to really come out in the portfolio. It's not really going to come out in the resume. The big focus on the resume is here's a ton of really cool outcomes with really good numbers and really specific. Here's a really nice and easy to read and designed resume that is a bit unique and has a bit of interesting aspects to it on how it relates to me. And that's it. I don't really want anything super intensive here. Okay, let's take a quick break. I think we've tested the content, so copy's been tested. Great. Now, next up, we're going to need to do, I'm just going to put the words components here. We'll need to do the margins and spacing. That's going to be pretty basic. Then we'll zoom in and experiment with how a role should be displayed. So that's specifically with the icon, the position, the layout, etc. And that's also going to test the color, actually. And we're also missing the kind of top bar, which is the name, portfolio, link / URL, phone, etc. Okay. I'm going to do a check-in with everyone. How are we going so far? A lot of it we just copy and paste for a bit. Any questions that anyone has that you may want to ask or raise?
I was wondering if you could clarify what you were saying about you're going to build it like you were building wireframes, so with components. It just kind of missed part of that.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So because I've been using Figma for so long, I just approach everything with the way I design it in Figma. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the experience section, get that design really nice, where it's got the role, it's got the dot points, it's got all the content I want in there. I'll turn that into a component and then just drag it into kind of my resume. This is just Figma stuff. It doesn't really matter too much from a resume perspective. It just makes it easier for me personally when I design visual things. But I'll show you what I mean.
Cool.
So when I design a lot of layout stuff, generally, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. Generally, I get stuck in the big picture of all the designs. So what helps me is when I do things kind of as atomically as possible. So we've just done this has been a test of our font ratio, our layout. It's not looking too bad, I personally think, at least for a first draft. Normally what I'll do is I'll build a first draft, get it to a point where I'm decently happy, walk away for a day, come back, and then do a few experimentations. So when I said component, what I meant was, let's just create a quick section here. This is our experimentation. It's a lab. There we go, labbing. This is kind of one of the biggest parts of the resume right here. It is the experience. It's kind of one of the most important parts. So this has been a real rough test. What I want to do now is take this and I'm going to turn this into like a literal Figma component. So what I'm going to do is design this the way I want. Then I'm going to turn it into a component. In case I decide to change designs later on, I don't want to have to go through and redesign everything. And then I can just kind of copy, redo all this sort of stuff. And then all I need to do is make changes in here. And then it all happens across the whole resume. You do this for products and design systems, but you don't actually need to do it for a publication like this. I just do it by habit. So it's not super that relevant unless you're interested in using Figma, really. That clearer?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Cool, awesome. Okay, now I've got a bit of a struggle here, actually. So that struggle is I'm going to duplicate this 3 times because I want to experiment with this. Once we've got this, it's going to help. I want to center everything around 2 core parts. A, the way the experienced role is designed, and the way the kind of top header is. Where it's got my name, it's kind of the first thing they're going to see. So we're going to start with experience, and then we'll do the top header because I like that. That's only the main reason. So if we actually jump over, there's a bit of an issue here, is from an icon perspective, if I actually jump over to Civil Aviation Safety Authority, I have a pretty bad logo. Oh, actually, though, there's like a tiny icon there. That's not too bad. But if we jump over to logos, by default, government agencies tend to use like their whole crest, which is just from a design perspective, personally, a terrible thing to put as a logo on a very tiny piece of page. It doesn't really make much sense. So we have a few options here. We can either make our own icon to represent that role, or try and see if there's something we can use. So let's see if there's something we can use. First off, this, not too bad. It's still not an icon. It's just text. I don't like that from a icon perspective. So let's see if we can find something a little better. Let's go back. There's like a tiny picture of an airplane in the bottom left of their website. So I kind of dig that. I can get access to it. New tab, let's see. Cool, it's just a tiny little airplane by the look of it. I don't mind that. It is, however, absolutely atrocious from a resolution perspective, but let's also do a quick check on their website. Might be something useful there, and I think there is, just because I know this. So if I just open up the inspect tool, they just use kind of the word CASA. But they've also got some cool icons here, which I do have access to, that might be usable, some of their local ones, as long as it roughly represents a role. But let's go with our terrible low resolution airplane and just see how that looks. We can always make a better resolution one later. Now, I like circles, but maybe almost like an app. That sounds kind of fun. Let's bring this down to 32. This is just a shape, so we're going to get rid of that. Okay, I'm kind of hating it, but let's keep going. There might be something to it. First designs are there to be hated. So let's try with Case Study Club, just so we can see 2 side by side. Now, thankfully, I do have Case Study Club's logo. Welcome to the Case Study Club Figma, guys. It is a mess, courtesy of me. we're in the middle of a branding redesign. So anyone who is seeing what we've got right now is seeing some of our Jan's amazing early concept work on the brand. So he's doing some really cool stuff. So I'm going to just take this. Thank you very much. Just export that as an SVG so I can drag and drop. That'll make my job easier. Okay. Oh, Lord. That's too big. Okay, I'm just going to drop this in, and I'm just doing a test right now, and then we'll jump over to the margins and the spacing. Oh, that is very badly scaled, and that's because of this. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go with this for now. I think this is good enough to just test our icon hypothesis. And I need to see it actually in here, or else I'm not going to be able to visualize this properly. While I'm doing this, interesting note. I don't know if you've ever seen it was on Reddit quite a while ago. It was around whether or not do you think in pictures or not. So when you think of an apple, you think literally you can kind of see an apple in your brain. No idea if anyone else does that, but I actually don't. So when I see something, I need to like experiment with it to actually visualize it. If I think of something, I actually don't see really pictures in my head. I just kind of see words. So that actually influences the way I design. I don't know if anyone else has that, but open to the floor if you want to get what I'm talking about.
That's super interesting because I know someone that doesn't have an internal monologue. So
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting thing. I have a very big internal monologue all the time. Okay, well, looking at this, I'm still hanging on to my design that I like. In terms of, I still do kind of like the idea of the color. Whether the icons are working for this layout, we might just go with it, even though it's looking a bit off. But we're going to see if we can salvage the design idea. If not, then we'll work something out there. I'm still not digging this too much, but let's do layout first. So we're going to I'm going to use Case Study Club because the CASA logo sucks. If anyone has a comment, feel free to talk. I don't mind. Okay, a few things to fix up in order for this to maybe look a little better. The spacing between the dot points makes it hard to read, so we're going to start with that. I like dot points, big fan of dot points. You can do it many other ways, but we're going to go with dot points because I like them. That's my logic here. Okay, let's select. We need to modify the spacing between listing, which normally sits under here, but for some reason, it's not showing up. That's weird. I normally have way more options here. Why don't I have option? Why do I not have options here? If anyone else is a Figma user, normally there's like more detailed spacing, but no. Okay. Well, we will do the old school way of doing it in Figma then. Oh, actually, it's probably because, yep, there we go. Can't see the spacing because it's not a style. So we got to disconnect the body, then make another style here for it. Okay, so there is a spacing option, list spacing. Excellent. So let's go. We'll keep to our 4 and 8 principle for now. Our grid system spacing, which is going to just go, the basic 8 and 4 spacing is common for most visual design. So it makes it really easy to go with that. And this is body list. So we can just apply this to all lists in the future. Okay, I like that a little more. It does kind of look a bit too far apart now in comparison to the spacing of the header. So let's modify it again, but let's see whether or not we can just go down to 4. This is really nitty work here. Okay, I'm happy with that. There's a little more spacing. It's a bit easier to read, so we're good there. A lot of spacing between here. Don't know why. Let's take a look. Because we're center aligned. That'll do it. Okay, that's a bit better. Just chuck our 8 spacing between there. That's a bit better. I'm going to ungroup this entire thing because, oh Lord, I'm breaking everything. These need to be center aligned, so they need to be grouped together, or maybe not. And undo everything. I need to keep a timer on, or else we're going to be here for ages. We're already getting close to time. Yeah, okay. We're just going to leave that as is. I'm not happy with the spacing of the icon, but it is now looking vaguely better. I was hoping I'd have a version of this done by the end, but I'm not so sure anymore. Let's do our margins. Let's chuck on layout grids here. Excellent. We've got a base grid, but let's also, we want to make some side margins for those. I don't know if anyone's done that before, but I have, and it is, some of the ways I do it is interesting. So let's just add a 16-point margin. That's 2/8 of 16. So we're going to go with that. We're also going to add a set of rows, just so we've got something to work with. Now, if I wanted to spend longer on this, what I would do here I would probably look up some kind of layout organizational template. I actually have a big book here that would actually be a good point of reference for that, but we're going to go really basic. So let's start aligning everything to our grid. I've just gone with the default, what it suggested, which was 5x5. It's probably not a good layout grid, but that's okay. And we want to create this as a component so I don't have to make all these changes again, and this can be much faster. And we'll stop in a second and just revisit, okay, where are we at? Because this definitely is not sendable right now. I didn't see Torfik on the call. I don't think so. Let me double check. I don't think Torfik's on the call. If you are Torfik, please let me know. Okay, let's check out the spacing. Bring this up here, check this up here. Excellent. I could do this for ages. Okay. So the spacing between items is okay. The icons kind of throw off the spacing, so we're going to increase that maybe just by 4. Anyone that is not 4. See how we're looking. Okay, that's a bit better. Now we are missing some things on here. We're missing our role. So this was, what did I say I was? Service designer, that's not my role. Okay. Senior designer, here's the latest one. Team lead. Now I have a habit of capitalizing everything, as you may have seen. These are roles, so I think that's okay. This is where maybe we'll utilize our heading, our small font. Let's see how that goes. That is very small, isn't it? Yeah, we'll stick with that. Okay, now because we decided that we're going, when we're trying to avoid going in columns as much as possible, other than the icon, I'm going to keep the role underneath here. Let's group these together. 4 under that. That way there's a bit more spacing. Okay, that's looking a little better. We've got, it's clear, it's kind of clean, it's simple. It's also updated on here. So let's turn the grids off and see how we are looking. There's a shortcut for turning the grids off, and I forget what that is. View layout grids, Shift G. Okay. Now, if we were to open critique this, Shift G. It would be that there's not much going on at the top, so that makes it a bit difficult. That it kind of just keeps going on. It does look a little bit like an essay here, and that is why our only first two are focusing on kind of smaller. So if we take a look at what the content might look like if it was more real, I might ask everyone for some potential critique in a second, actually. Very cool. You've been watching me yammer away, be indecisive about fonts. I think the margins are too narrow. Let's just change that very briefly, and then we'll stop and check in. .32 margin. I find paper always has way thicker margins than everything else. So this is digital, so we're not actually going to send this, but let's just check the margins here. Maybe we need to pull in something from somewhere else, like a pre-done template from another reference for grids. Okay, I actually think it's looking a bit better. There's way more improvements that could be done, but I think the margins are helping. There's not much of a visual indication on where to look, and you'll see in my old resume, I actually put little like notches in here. And so I'm going to do that just for my own visual design sake, even though I kind of don't want to go with old design choices. I want to bring in some new ones. So it's not bad, actually. I don't mind that. But let's do a check-in. Okay. There's way more that could be done here. It's kind of defeating my simplicity. I wanted this to look like you could do it in a word processor, but it still looked really well designed without looking like it was done in a word processor. If that makes any sense at all. Okay, I need to stop fiddling with this or it's just going to keep going. Let's do a check-in. So we're almost reaching time. So we've gone through choosing a font scale just to make sure our scales are right. We've set up some basic margins just to make sure that we're working in some kind of grid grounds. We've developed the main experience one and kind of tried to give even proportions to our spacing, which makes it nice and clear because we're going for clear, simplicity, and clarity first. So we want content, layout, and type. Then we can go color, design decisions, everything else, because that's the bedrock that everything's built upon. Any questions? In fact, does anyone hate this design? I want to hear anyone who's like, this kind of sucks, man. Please chime up. Anyone going to tell me it sucks? Please do. No, it looks okay. It's okay. Going to find that if I stuck at this for probably, I could keep this going for about 2 hours and just sink my brain into this. And you'd find all of a sudden by the end, we'd probably have about 16 different resumes with all really varied visual designs. And then I'd give up for the day and come back tomorrow and be like, oh, I like that one. Yeah. Okay, I mean, for us to finish this off, because something I really wanted to is I actually wanted to finish these things for these calls and then go send it to an actual job role. I think that would be super cool. But I think you guys have seen me get to the draft and you've seen most of the decisions that I've been trying to make here. So really, it's at this point in the design that it gets to a really heavy iterative phase where we're just churning through very different kinds of designs to see, is it this font? Is it that font? Is it this? Is it that? We've got the copy down. Other than cleaning up the copy, the foundations are now set. So yeah, we're up to the iterations. In terms of what's missing here that we haven't covered is probably, what about that little description we all seem to have at the top of our resumes that are like, I'm a designer that does this. That's probably missing on this here. I was actually tempted to not include it in my resume at this point. I used to have it when I was applying for mid-level roles and low-level roles, just because I really wanted people to know a bit more about me. However, I'm reaching a stage, and I've actually seen it as my LinkedIn has evolved over time, where I just give 3 different titles that kind of summarize what I do. Right now, I think it's always changes every year. I think I've gone with like senior designer, facilitator, and coach. Still don't know how to make that little thumb thing go up, but those are the 3 words I use. And when you read that, it kind of gives you 3 of the kind of core big rock areas that me covers. So that's kind of what I might include in this. That way it's kind of like me, my 3 core identity roles, and then my experience, education, certifications. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Because I'm going to stick on probably for another half hour and just try and see if I can solidify this visual design. Anyone doing their resume right now and you're at a sticking point, maybe you're at a stage where you're like, this just doesn't work. I'm not going to know this resume works until I start applying for things.
I have a question.
Go for it. Thank you.
People are always like, oh, make sure it's like ATS appropriate or whatever, like for the thing. Like what, like, do you think about that at all when you do this? Or I don't even know, honestly, like how to make something ATS ready, but that's the thing.
Yeah, so there's a few cool things. For one, there's like just checkers you can run it through. That's one thing. ATS, like they pretty much just scan documents. It's kind of, and look for keywords and kind of do these like calculations to kind of interpret things. Sometimes they like give a rating on resumes somehow. I don't quite fully know exactly the mechanism behind their ratings, but generally, if you stick to a single column layout, if you keep it simple, clear, as if it was done on a word processor mostly, it's incredibly hard to go wrong in any way, shape, or form. The times when ATS goes wrong is when you have like really color designs and contrast and multi-level layouts and stuff in the resume that maybe, you know, like those skills that I had, the relative skills. And like, I don't know what it would try. It would try and read into this relative skills section. There's not much anyone can do with that information. So having maybe, if I swapped it out for something simpler, it would be just like, here's a list of my kind of top skills. Here's a list of my tools. That's probably the most basic way of doing it. But yeah, so ATS wise, use ATS checkers to kind of get a bit of a grading. If you haven't done anything too fancy and your resume still follows fairly common like document design, then there's really not much chance it goes wrong, really. ATS tends to happen at really big companies. Like I'm actually looking at an ATS product right now, applicant tracking system. Let's see, what does it tell us about these sorts of things? Doesn't tell me anything about it, does it? No, it doesn't. Cool, that's fun. But it seems to do analytics where it just searches for kind of keywords. It looks for, if it can't interpret, your document, then that's kind of the main issue there. Could ask GPT, Anna asked. Yeah, that's also, I would also highly recommend uploading your resume to GPT and asking it to critique it. It can do a pretty good go, in my opinion. Yeah.
One more question. Do you try to keep your fonts in your resume matching like your capabilities deck or your portfolio?
I do. Stuff? If I can, I would. That's like my best. My ideal is to pick really simple fonts, and that just work for me, and they work for my kind of branding, which is down to earth and simple. I'm a simple person. Don't like tons of fancy complexity. It makes my brain hurt. So if I can, I prefer to create my color scheme. If my ideal is that my branding, color scheme, and everything's consistent across all platforms. So you know exactly where you're looking. My resume has colors or things, and then my capabilities deck echoes the same thing. That would be ideal. Yeah. Doesn't always have to be like that. Honestly, your resume can be different. It can just be black and white. People are fine and used to that. I would prefer choosing good type scales and type over color, just because easier to read.
Cool. And then you mentioned a book, like a layout book. What layout book are you talking about?
Let me reach for it right now. So this is like the foundation of Grid Systems. So when I was doing those layouts, this is Grid Systems. It's half in German and half in English. It is by, what's his name again? Josef Müller-Brockmann, which is like, I've butchered that, but he is the foundation person who wrote the book on grid systems and established it among all things. And If I kind of tried to hold it up, so it's got some cool stuff. It goes over all the like the A4 layouts here. It even gives some really good, like it talks about like point sizes. There's some scales we got going on here, but it does eventually go into, where is it? Here we go. It starts breaking down common grid layouts, like common ways to lay out your grid for formats. I actually haven't fully read this book. I started and then realized my vocabulary sucked, so I had to go and read 3 other books to read this book. Just because it talks about type scales, and at the time, I didn't know what a type scale was. I had no idea. And there's some cool column layouts here. So really good for inspiration. And it talks about from a readability perspective, from a like ratio perspective, how to make something that looks nice. It's probably a bit much for what we're doing. I would just probably Google some really good layouts and try and take something from there as a starting point. Because this really does talk a lot about print. But I think there is a section on digital now that I think about it somewhere. Yeah. The foundation is if you're using spacing, keep everything within a multiple of 8 or 4. That'll do amazing wonders to your designs if everything's a multiple of 8, maybe 4, add or minus 4. Everything's then consistent. Any other questions? If I wasn't a Figma nerd, I would probably have done this instead on either Canva for a really quick design, or literally tried to boot up Google Documents and just gone with that and seeing could I just do it in there. Some constraints you might have is very occasionally, it doesn't happen as much anymore, but I used to get people wanting me to send my resume as a docx, not a PDF. But I haven't really been getting that response from people anymore. I think everyone's used to sending PDFs. So originally, my original resume design was done in InDesign, which was useful. But when everyone asked for a docx, I could not give them one. So, but I don't think people have to seem to worry about that anymore. If you have been asked for that, then maybe that's a different thing. I would then just copy and paste everything into Google Doc, fix up some of the font, and send them that. Because I prefer my design. Yeah, some questions that are remaining for my resume right now are, I have a ton of other roles that we haven't included in that copy. Whether or not should they be included is an interesting question. Oh, that's how I do the thumbs up. I just put my left hand and kind of... No, okay. The icon design still isn't quite as working as I envisioned in my brain. So whether that will work or not, what I'll probably do is develop a good enough draft of this resume. Then I'll take this draft and do probably like 3 very different designs just to break my brain out of this kind of design space. I'll then come back to it later and then choose one and then refine the copy and then just start sending it, even if I don't fully like it. Things that could derail the resume or completely change it in the future. I still need to draft the capabilities deck. I still need to do a website. And in terms of what font am I choosing for them? What's the color scheme? What's all of those things? I have no idea of. So what I could see in the future is designing this resume as is and then having to do a visual redesign later to match my brand once that brand's been developed. That's how I think it would probably go. That's why I'm kind of looking for a black and white, really simple style. Because I might do the branding work down the line and it becomes a blank slate that I can then start applying more stuff to later on. Yeah. Anna asked, would you discourage 2-column resumes for ATS? That's a good question. It seems like many people are applying with 2-column resumes and it's doing fine. And it seems to pick up on it. I've seen plenty of designers who get amazing roles at big companies, small companies, and they have a 2-column resume and it looks great. I honestly would say don't overthink ATS. It can be tempting to feel like this system is controlling our whole resume and our lives. But generally speaking, it doesn't come into it super often unless you're applying for really big companies. At that case, then I personally recommend single column, but people still do 2 columns and it seems to work. I don't think it has as big of a sway as people necessarily worry about. if you've got clear headers, clear ratios, if you're using wording, so look at your job roles and see, okay, what wording from this job role do I need to make sure is present in my resume? Leadership, mentorship, user stories. Maybe there's design systems if you're applying for roles that have a lot of design systems. Figma, that's maybe why you would add it as under tools, is maybe some of these ATS or those first applications, they specifically are asking for Figma. So you're just making sure the keywords are in there, really. That's also why sometimes that relative skills sections people will put in. It's more of a keyword thing than anything else. I like to think of ATS as almost like search engine optimization. If you've ever been in that, you're looking for the right keywords that you want to just make sure is in there. So it kind of upticks your chances for things. Yeah. Highly recommend checking out the winning resume either on the portfolio operating system. Everyone here should have it. If you don't, please check your email. If it's not in your email, please let us know. We have a way more in-depth guide to like ATS and resume. How do resumes designed in Figma, Canva, or Illustrator perform on ATS? Really good question. So generally speaking, as far as I'm aware, and you make me want to look this up actually, most people upload resumes as PDFs, right? PDFs have their own document structure. So whether you do it in Word or Figma, as far as I know, the PDF is still the same at the end. Doing some performance testing there would be fascinating to be kind of do these testing. I'm pretty sure people have done that. We do this now. ATS testing. We have a ton of resumes, so it would be really intriguing to take some of the resumes from the community and just pass them through ATS testers to see what happens. Maybe there might be something fun to do at some stage. We'll do a little article on it or something. But there are free ATS resume scanners. Honestly, if you're worried about your resume, design it how you want and then pass it through a tester and see what happens. If it says this is terrible, then often these testers also tell you why and how to fix it. And so then it's a matter of just kind of optimizing from there. We recommend content first. Get your type and your ratios first. Sometimes that's done by default in word processors, and then go from there. Instead of worrying about the ATS when you maybe don't have a resume or you haven't figured out how you want to customize it for it to be a bit more you. Then worry about it later. Worrying about it now is not really going to do too much. You're still going to have to face all the big questions about a resume anyway. So you might as well first start with them. Any other questions? Bhavana, did that kind of answer yours? A caveat here on resumes. This is a big caveat in the sense that depending on what culture you're in and where you are in the world can really vary your resume. I have seen in a lot of Asian countries like Korea, China, and I believe Japan as well, they put things I would never put on a resume in there. They put marital status, grades. I don't think they do it as much now. I could be wrong about that, but I have seen many resumes, especially also from, I don't know if it's as common now in India, but when I was working with a lot of people who were doing coaching in India, they often had a lot of similar things, if I remember correctly. If anyone on the call is from India, I don't know if there is a few. I don't know if you have any input on this from a cultural perspective. I've worked with a lot of people who are designers in India at the moment, and resumes have always been a really interesting conversation. So if anyone has any insight into that, please let me know. But yeah, that's always been a topic because just the cultural expectation of what you're looking for can be slightly different. And resumes, more than portfolios, seem to have a lot of legacy in many different countries. Yeah. Another caveat to just on that, for an example is, for example, here in Australia, you cannot put your address and you should not put a picture of yourself on your resume, especially if you're applying for government, because the reason is people then can discriminate against you. And so when people are looking at resumes, we don't want people discriminating. So therefore we get people to remove things that might introduce bias into the process, like pictures or location or age. So there is a small caveat there. However, I still think experience is number one. No matter what, we're always looking at the experience, no matter what resume, where you are. If you remove experience from the equation, your resume becomes useless. Whereas everything else is kind of negotiable. So if you focus on getting really strong dot points that are as as outcome centric as possible, with as specific as possible. If you don't have metrics, then specificity, always stumble every time with that word, is your strength there. Here is a PDF of the book. Awesome. Thank you, Anna, for dropping that in. It's a very interesting book, this one. So I highly recommend taking a look at it if that really intrigues you. But there's also some great Figma articles. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do now is there's a big gap in the resume right now, and I'm just going to do that now. So feel free, if people want to stick around, go for it. I normally put music on, and I've just realized there's been no music. And like, no wonder why I haven't stuck to time. There's been no music to keep me there. So I'm going to chuck that on, and I'm going to just finalize the header on this at the moment, and then finish this off in about 15 minutes. Okay, I'm apparently playing music, but I don't hear anything. Okay. No music for me. That's fine. I don't need it. I actually do need it, please. Okay, now if anyone does have any questions or you're facing issues, my biggest recommendation is also, once you have a draft, to post it on something like the what do you call it? The Get Feedback channel. That's a great place for critiquing. Okay, cool. We have some cool music going. Wonderful. I want to get this header done. Let's chuck our grids back on. They are the holy grail for us. We talked about that I was going to have three roles instead of a description. So let's give that a go. Instead of like a description saying, "Hi, I'm Ben," or "I'm a passionate person that does stuff," we're going to try something a little different. So let's go senior designer, coach. It's not the music I was after, but it's okay. This is the wrong playlist. No, it isn't. Right playlist. Okay, so senior designer and coach. What's another fancy title I could give myself that's technically accurate, but sounds really nice? Facilitator, that's kind of my main thing. So I'm looking for the keywords that kind of describe what I'm about. I'm a big fan of putting like big font and then small font below big font. I really like that design. It always seems to work well for me. So we're going to do that here. We're also going to group these experience together and just chuck a small spacing of, well, we're going to go big spacing. I don't like this with this. So okay. Well, mobile number is 1. I do want to add. Hopefully the music's not too loud. If it is, please let me know. Up here now, website, that's an issue. I had a website. It had a domain name called benmclaren.com. Then I let it expire and someone stole it from me and then tried to charge me $3,000 to get it back. So I had to buy alternative domains. Let's see what has happened to that domain. Have they released it, or are they still trying to scalp it? Ooh. I'm just going to check that domain because one day I would like it back, and I don't want to. It cost me $10 to register, and they really wanted me to pay a lot of money to get it back. It's my name. How much are they charging now? Oh, 1,000. Oh, it's a lot. Jesus Christ. And it renews for $23 a year. I'm going to say goodbye. It's a premium because I registered it once. That's why. But I have alternative domains, so we're going to go with that. benmclaren.co. Just no M. It doesn't actually have a functional website, but we're going to keep it there anyway. Okie dokie. Now, I like icons. Pictures make me happy. So we're going to look for some icons, and we're going to play with some icons a little here. Feather icons. I'm a big fan of feather icons. I love their stuff. They're simple. It kind of echoes with the vibe I'm going for. Let's go phone. Why not? Let's add phone icons to our stuff here. I like that. I want this one. Give me it. Yeah. So like a website too. Web. Oh, maybe cloud. Not really representing of a website, but we're going to go with it. The alignment is torture. $24. We're going to jump this down to 16 multiples of 8. Help here. I feel like I made them worse. Story of my life. Okay. I'm going to claim good enough, even though there's so much wrong with it. Okay. Now there's some things off. Let's investigate a little. Experience header is a bit too big. It kind of competes with this header here. And is that because they're the same header? This is 17.5. This is 21. Okay. So one is heading 6. The other one is heading 5. So there's a few things we could do here. We could reduce the prominency of these headers because we have icons to compensate. So if I unbolded that, that's okay. We could change the font. We could introduce a second font, which would bring some clarity here. We could change the spacing, the alignment. We could change, like we put a little notches on here, which was something that we could do where there's like notches kind of guiding where you are, where you need to read. Let's bring in some secondary logos because I'm struggling to visualize some of these without seeing like the proper logos we would actually include here. Just chuck a stroke on this, make this circular. Why not? Everything's circular now. Cool. We're going to swap this out for this one. Oh, yeah. And we've got Case Study Club. We're going to just go with, we're going to create our own little icon for this just because I'm not going to use whatever they've got. So we're going to use big words, CASA. Frame this, auto layout, 32, 32. Chuck on a white fill. Chuck on a black one. This is still too big. We've got 32 in width. I think these are all 32 in width just to keep everything consistent. Yeah, close enough. Okay, that's going to have to do. And let's chuck another quick stroke on top of that as well. We're doing on time. Cool, a few more minutes. And then I think that's it. Now, making these into components has actually been my detriment. So I'm undoing. Okay, that's given us a better look on how it would actually look. Where now that's a bit better. I'm digging this more. The kind of the logos are giving a bit of an extra element. The really clear spacing I find to be very pleasing. if we do the old trick of doing all caps? Nope, that will not work. It looks terrible already. There's a few other common things where you make the title smaller than all the subtitles just to make it kind of stand out. No, that's not working either. Okay, we'll stick to our basic kind of font here. So let's bring it down to 5. I'm very indecisive about this, so I'm just going to leave that there for now. Now we have a lot of white spacing at the bottom, so it kind of just comes off the side. And if we looked at my old resume, we had a lot of the color acted as kind of fillers. So we had black up here, gave us a lot of spacing at the top. The black at the bottom made the big gaps between everything here feel less obvious, which we don't really have that luxury at the moment when it comes to this one. But we can bring in some small design options that kind of maybe help here a little. So I'm a big fan of utilizing, whenever I have to work with really simple designs, just really simple horizontal rules. Why won't this work? I'm using the pen tool, that's why. So having just simple, really faded lines, these are design choices that have worked very well for me in the past. Things like this is kind of gives a nice accent. So what if we added that between experience? That's not too bad. What about if it was a spacer instead? That's kind of the purpose of it. That's not bad either. I'm kind of digging this. Shift it up a little more so we're feeling the top. Not bad. I'm kind of going with this design. Ooh. As I said, we are in experimentation mode really at the moment. That's kind of where we're at. I just want to put it between these two items. Why is that so hard? Oh my God. Okay, there we go. Got it. Okay. Okay is my filler word as well as Actually don't like that. There we go. Hey, we found a few different bit of design choices. I'm liking the whole senior designer coach. I'm kind of digging the little icons here. I don't mind that at all. We're just going to keep that there. We could play with that for ages. Okay, I'm not too dissatisfied with what we've got, actually. It's not too bad. There are definite additions that could be done to make it look cleaner, but I'm liking the horizontal rule. It acts as a really nice guide. It segments each area really well. I still think the experience section needs something to really make it stand out as a header for everything here. I did play with the idea of just, what if I just removed it? We're so used to putting experience on there that why not include it? I'm going to go a little crazy and do that for now. Maybe it will backfire. I don't know, but let's do it. I like crazy. So I'm sure they know it's experience. It's literally on there. Whether or not that will interfere with ATS is an interesting question. They might rely on those headers. Okay, I'm reaching time, but I'm going to finish off the icon stuff just because we've somehow at the last minute brought the design choices a little together. So let's finish this off, and I'm going to consider this version 1. Now, some weaknesses here that could happen. I'm that maybe my roles are too diverse here. So if you look, there's actually quite a lot of different roles here. We've got a senior designer, then we've got a community lead. Calling myself a design manager in this role. Great thing about startups is you actually make your own titles, which has helped me immensely gain experience in the past. I think 3 of my roles when I got my first design roles were actually like startup volunteer roles where they were like, cool, do some work for us and you can just do whatever role you want. So that was actually very cool for developing kind of experience without having experience. Joining a startup's kind of one of my tips for anyone if you ever want to tackle that. I'm going to change this song because it's got not safe for work wording. So these horizontal lines are just annoying me right now because they need better spacing. Let's just fix that up. Oh, this gets me every time I've got auto layout on. Padding's on, auto layout's on. That'll do it. Fill container. And then, nope, still fixed width. Why are you fixed width? Absolute. There we go. Okay, cool. It's much better with horizontal lines if they have like a little bit of spacing on both sides. That way it acts as a spacer rather than like full length segmenter, if that's a word. So if you are reusing these sorts of things. There we go. Now it's a proper spacer. That's better. But since we've introduced a big spacer, we now need to remove all the spacing from everything else. This is where making this a component actually would be helpful. Spacer. There's another horizontal line here. Delete that. There we go. Okay. That's better. Let's just tidy up our designs. Awesome. Okay. Let's grab these icons and then chuck the educate. I'm going to chuck these certificates in education on, and then we'll do the icons. And then other than the missing design stuff, we're good as a first draft. I'm speaking in half words, which is a habit sometimes. On our grid system again, and awesome. Now the spacing between some of these, ideally I want the same spacing between the header here and our experience section as here, but I'm going to eyeball it for now.
I had a question about your margins. Yeah, like I saw that you were using 5 versus increments of 8, and I'm curious as to why does that have to do with the A4 format or?
Oh, that's an interesting. Let me check my margins. Oh, so that's 5 rows. In terms of that's a number of rows. Normally, if you're designing digital, you'll probably do. They normally go off, I think, what they call a 12-point grid system, or 12 row grid system, which is the default for things like all kind of web design, really. I have split them into 5. I'm not actually using all 5 really. I've aligned it to the proper margins, but I haven't actually used these rows. So if I wanted to, I could just change this and it wouldn't actually matter to the design we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. So I just left it by default, really. So I could still do it like this, and it wouldn't influence how I was doing the design. If I did want to use grids, then for A4, you would probably, there are some, I think, row layouts for this. There's a few things you could do. If you're doing even, then you could just split it into, I think, common to do 3s is quite common. So you could do a double-sided grid with 3 sections. Yeah, so I find the 4 and 8 point does really well for spacing. That's like a spacing ratio. In terms of a grid system ratio, that's a different kind of ratio. You'll find other kinds of ratios that. So you'll use you'll use a 4 point or 8 point grid system. Sometimes when you're working with 8 point grid systems, you find that you still have to do an increment of 4, and that seems to maintain the ratio of 8. But yeah, when it comes to layouts, they'll often use a different sort of number. So you'll do 12. It's common to split things into 12 rows and then make up layouts based upon 12. So just to give you an idea what I mean by that, because that's very broad. If we start with, oh, triggered something. New space. No, go away. I don't want to. Oh, I turned on dev mode. Oh, that's Shift D. I did not know that. I was trying to duplicate, but that's okay. Back to design mode, please. Control D. Nope. Okay, well, let's do this. There's a visual that I personally love. Always helps me. So if we, let's see, it's 3, that's 6. The way they kind of work it for most, and this is especially for desktop design, is we have 12 really bad columns here, right? And this is our. I would like to see my. I've forgotten all my shortcuts. There we go. Excellent. So this is our screen design we've got going on here. Now, no matter how much this increases, there's going to be a kind of common element here. I'm butchering things right now. Okay, this is 12 rows. Now, the way this works is if you want to make grids from this, you'll make it out of each individual kind of 12 columns. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's take this one here and say I want a double column. So if you've worked with grids before and this is not new to you, please just stop me. Bring to the front. You'll make your layouts out of this 12 grid system. So if we want to do double or half, so we're going to go across 6 columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we will do the same with this. So now we have a half. So we're going to group them along here. So we'll use the 12 grid to break up everything into our kind of building blocks units and then build our grid system around that. If we were doing thirds, that would be, I think, 4, 4. No. I'm mathing right now. It is 4, 4. So that would be 4 blocks. Now you'll find other grid systems, but the 12-point grid system has such flexibility that it's kind of become the common standard. Pretty much most of the web is built off a 12 layout system, especially Bootstrap. If you wanted just a single kind of width column, then you'd take up all 12 grid spaces. Yeah, and so this will expand and decrease depending on your kind of screen design. So if we went really small into mobile world, you wouldn't do this properly, and you kind of end up something like this. It's kind of all squished, but yeah. So this is one of the systems they use to kind of come up with different layouts. So there's another common layout, which is the kind of quarter third. I always forget it, but it kind of looks like that. And then you can build your own grids off the 12-point system here. There are others, but generally no one probably uses them unless you're in like publishing or print. That's probably the most common. Yeah. Does this make any sense at all?
Yeah. This is familiar and it makes sense. I was just curious to see how you kind of walked through it, but like, I guess maybe I still don't understand. I guess maybe what you were saying is like the reason for 510 that you had in there That's because you were aligning it with your layout grid versus your like spacing grid. Is that?
Yeah. So I was keeping the layout grid separate from our spacing grid.
I
That's
got
correct.
it. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry for my long waffle about grids. I have to actually
No.
go write up a ton of documentation about grids in the next few weeks, which just for our design system, which I've been neglecting for about a year. Which is not going to be fun. No, it'll be fun. I'm sure it'll be fun. It'll be fun. I'll enjoy
Yeah,
it. I'll
thanks
find a
for
way
that.
to do it.
That's helpful.
Dot points. I've got to put dot points in somewhere. And my sneaky capitalization issue is popping back in. You can kind of see it occasionally popping up in places. But okay, we are way over time. I went off on a tangent, so I'm going to do those last. Just seeing who maybe has left. I'm going to do those last icons and then just jump. I think it's just you, Anna, me, and another person who is Submit. Thanks for sticking on for way past our original time, guys. Here we go. This is their logo. Copy image. At this point, we're just into finicking, nerding out, and copy and paste. But it's kind of fun sometimes. Awesome. I'm going to do the exact same technique I did for CASA, but for government, for this other one over here. Because this department, they don't really do logos. Okay. Lovely. This is our version 1 design. Kind of wish I'd kept those grids on there. They're useful for aligning a little bit of stuff. Ooh, but what if we align it straight across? Okay, I should stop or else this will just, it'll never end. You just keep going. But we're also missing a little bit of detail from here from the certifications in education, but that's okay. We're looking pretty good. I think the icon design's not doing too bad. It's kind of giving an element of like interest and a difference between them. It kind of makes it stand out. I like the senior designer, coach, and facilitator. The little icons next to the numbers pleases me. There's still more to do. We've got a lot of blank space over here that kind of feels a bit too empty. Because we've got so much extra space, there's probably a lot we can do to maybe add or bump this up to make it seem a bit more impressive or just something else along those lines. So there's still a little bit of work to be done from a finessing, but I think I think I'm pretty happy to go with this design for now. It's by no means perfect, but it definitely works. It's clear, it's consistent, and that's I think the priority, at least for my work here. Yeah. Okay. And I think we got far enough. Well, thanks for jumping on, guys. These portfolio live sessions, they're completely unscripted. So it's always a struggle to make sure I don't go off on like long tangents or I like having my structure because it keeps the workshops together. But I think this will be the last resume one. What I'm going to do is probably take this and just do a ton of iterations on it, finesse the design. And then with this recording, I'll publish kind of, here's the latest design, but here's also the live Figma link to the like 16 different other designs and how they played out step by step. So keep an eye on the events. We're going to switch over to capabilities deck next. I may even schedule a few sessions for personal branding because that's something I need to do. So I might as well, we might do some interesting things together there. Also keep an eye on the community. There's going to be a ton of events being queued up. If you need feedback on your work, there's two things you can do. We have the Get Feedback channel, but you can also schedule a feedback session for you. I will be sending out links to a ton of different people to book sessions for those who would like them. So keep an eye out on your messages soon. But thanks for joining in. Thanks, Anna, for asking all the questions, by the way. I love it when people do. This is, again, unscripted, so it's a bit raw. Have any questions, Sumit?
No questions at the moment. Yeah, just kind of need to put the time into my own as well.
Yeah, that's I think the kicker here. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Anna.
This is super helpful. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like starting my design